Okay, picture some of the absolute most dangerous and volatile places in the world right now. We're talking active armed conflict zones, regions completely devastated by severe climate shocks, areas grappling with mass displacement, and places where digital information disorder is literally fueling real-world violence. Now, I want you to imagine having to send thousands of people directly into those exact environments to deliver life-saving aid. How in the world do you protect them without just pulling them out entirely? Well, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we are unpacking a massive, truly fascinating paradigm shift in United Nations security leadership. We're going to look straight at the strategic guide designed for the UN's Assistant Secretary General for Safety and Security, and we'll figure out exactly how you lead a global security function when the stakes are literally life and death. So here is our roadmap for today's Explainer. First, we'll cover leading in high-risk environments. Second, security as a mission enabler. Third, prioritizing duty of care. Fourth, focusing on field realities. And finally, modernizing for future threats.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, leading in high-risk environments, or the crucible of UN leadership.
You know, UN workers today face this incredibly complex, interconnected web of crises. It is definitely no longer just about guarding a building, right? It's about navigating intense political polarization, cyber-physical threats, and straight-up direct attacks on humanitarian workers. So to survive this crucible, the Assistant Secretary General's comprehensive leadership agenda is broken down into exactly 50 strategic points. And this isn't just a random collection of couchy slogans. Each one of these 50 points is a highly practical directive with massive implications for policy, field operations, partnerships, technology, and ethics. It is a dense, rigorous framework designed for pure institutional survival.
But how do you even wrap your head around an agenda that big? Well, the strategic guide requires leaders to view everything through 4 interconnected lenses. First up is people. That means focusing on psychological safety and duty of care. Second is operations, which is all about preparedness, crisis response, and actually negotiating access into those tough areas. Third is governance, so ensuring accountability and carefully managing relationships with host governments. And fourth is transformation, bringing in things like AI and early warning systems. And the kicker here is you can't just pick one. Each lens reinforces the others, proving that modern security is about way more than just putting up fences or writing out technical procedures.
Moving right along to Section 2, security as a mission enabler. This is where we see a real paradigm shift in security.
Okay, this is where we need to completely dismantle the myth of what a security leader actually does in a humanitarian context. See, for a long time, the underlying assumption was that the security department basically existed just to say no. It was seen as this bureaucratic roadblock meant to stop operations by default just to avoid liability. But under this massive paradigm shift, security is a mission-enabling discipline. It's absolutely no longer an excuse to withdraw. It's a proactive strategy to safely stay and deliver the aid. It's all about achieving an informed presence and managing what they call residual risk. To actually pull that off, the UN uses a concept called security risk management. And I want to be clear, this is not some static, dusty checklist. It is a living, breathing discipline used by leaders to make fully informed decisions, to reduce vulnerability, and ultimately to create the conditions for personnel to serve with absolute confidence. It's exactly how leaders balance their incredibly ambitious operational mandates with the very stark, unforgiving reality of the risks on the ground. And this brings up a seriously high-stakes moral balancing act, which is captured just perfectly in the guide. It says, the purpose of security is not to stop operations by default, nor to accept unacceptable exposure in the name of delivery. So you can't just hide behind a wall, but you also absolutely cannot be reckless. Every single major decision has to be supported by rigorous evidence, deep threat analysis, and a really clear acceptance of accountability. Which brings us to Section 3, prioritizing duty of care, focusing closely on the human element. Because, hidden beneath all of this governance and risk management jargon is a deeply emotional and profoundly human core. At the end of the day, security is fundamentally about people. We're talking about national staff who are living and working under intense local political pressure. We're talking about drivers navigating incredibly dangerous, conflict-ridden roads every single day. We're talking about analysts who are exposed to deeply traumatic information day in and day out. The strategic guide intentionally grounds its narrative in empathy, explicitly acknowledging that it is these real individuals on the front lines who carry the absolute heaviest exposure for the entire organization. So, to actually protect these individuals, the UN has developed this comprehensive duty of care compact. And it goes so far beyond just physical compound security or medical evacuations, though obviously those are still super vital. It actively prioritizes mental health by mandating psychological safety, staff counseling, and trauma management for teams working under extreme stress. It also enforces dignity and inclusion, ensuring things like family support and gender-specific risk mitigation, because modern security has to protect the mind just as fiercely as the body, making sure people feel heard and respected while they are working under, frankly, unimaginable conditions.
All right, let's look at Section 4, focusing on field realities, or field first operations. Now, how do you actually implement all of this across the entire globe? Well, a heavily centralized bureaucracy sitting in a comfy New York office simply won't survive the chaos of a decentralized crisis zone. The guide makes a really blunt assertion here. Headquarters policy is utterly useless if it doesn't work in the field, period. Because decisions in crisis environments are almost always made on the fly, with incomplete information, by the local teams executing the mission. So headquarters has to invest heavily in local knowledge to ensure that safety measures are highly practical, not just formal boxes to check for compliance. So this begs a pretty critical question, right? How exactly does the UN prepare for the totally unpredictable in these rapidly changing environments? Because when a crisis erupts, you definitely don't have time to form a committee. You need immediate action. Well, the answer lies in something called the crisis continuity cycle. It's this action-oriented loop designed to anticipate shocks way before they explode into institutional emergencies. It starts off with rigorous scenario planning and exercises long before any crisis actually hits, which then feeds directly into very concrete contingency plans. From there, teams establish really clear action triggers, so they know exactly what specific event will automatically launch a specific response. And finally, they conduct totally honest after-action reviews to ensure they are constantly learning from any incidents. It's a fluid, continuous loop ensuring that operations never just freeze up when things get chaotic. And that leads us to our final stop, Section 5, Modernizing for Future Threats, and a look at transformation and the future. Because the global threat environment is evolving way faster than traditional policy cycles can even handle, this immense security apparatus has to adapt quickly. The Assistant Secretary General's transformation agenda leans incredibly heavily on technology. We're talking about deploying AI-assisted risk analysis, secure digital tools, responsible data governance, and proactive early warning systems. But the guide is crystal clear on one vital point here. This tech exists to improve and simplify field decisions. It is absolutely positively not meant to add more bureaucratic red tape to the plates of teams that are already stretched to their absolute limits. So when we pull all of those 50 strategic points and connected lenses together, this is the ultimate takeaway of our explainer today. Success for the UN's security leadership means maintaining a responsible presence. It is all about having the courage, the data, and the real-world practical field support to deliver aid in the hardest, most unforgiving places on Earth, all without ever forgetting the dignity and the safety of the people who make that delivery possible in the first place. It's a really profound shift from risk avoidance directly to active risk management. And I want to leave you with a critical thought to ponder. We've seen exactly how the UN is restructuring its entire security philosophy to handle an increasingly volatile world. But as global threats continue to evolve so much faster than traditional policy, how must other global organizations, NGOs, and governments adapt to ensure that those who save lives are kept safe themselves? The blueprint we've explored today offers a really compelling, if challenging, path forward. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive, and keep asking those big questions.